So each person who enters the Chernobyl exclusion zone is given an accumulator of radiation. So it's a small device. It doesn't show any numbers. It accumulates the dose of radiation that you absorb the whole day. In the evening, you give it back to the administration of the zone, and they check to make sure that you were not overexposed. And with the guide by your side, you will not be. That is another device. That is the Geiger counter, and it shows you the numbers. It shows you the level of radiation at each step of your trip. And look, we are already inside of the Chernobyl exclusion zone. What are the numbers here? 0.1716 microsieverts per hour. Guys, that is less than in my apartment in Kyiv. That is absolutely normal, natural level of radiation. The sanitary level is 0.3 microsieverts per hour. So 0.30. What is below 0.30 is natural and normal. So we are already in the Chernobyl zone, and the radiation here is absolutely fine because we are in the 30 kilometers radius. That is like the buffer zone now. The closer you are to the nuclear power plant, to the burial sites, the higher is the level. So in Chernobyl exclusion zone, there are still places which are contaminated and which we are not allowed to go to enter because of the contamination. So the routes that we follow, they were checked by the dosimetries and approved by the government. So they are safe for the visit of tourists. So here it is natural and normal, but now we will drive to the place where the level is higher than natural. So now we are already in the 10-kilometer zone. We are very close to the nuclear power plant. Here we have the burial site. That village, Kopachi village, was the burial site itself. And that is the level of radiation in that village. Now we have 0.6 microsieverts per hour, and it's getting higher and higher. So that is already above the natural level, 0.6 on the Geiger counter. Here we have the hotspots. What are those hotspots? These are the places where this radioactive dust, the source of radiation, is accumulated. It is mostly in the ground. So let me show you how it works. I know that the hotspot is settled here. It's not migrating anymore. So we already know where exactly how much of radiation is along our routes. So 1.7 is already higher. Now we move 1.3, we move it closer and closer to the source of radiation. And here we've got 2.2, 3.18, 13, 12. So about 12 microsieverts per hour. That is the level of radiation. Do you remember what is the sanitary level? 0.30, and that is 12 microsieverts. Still, you see, I moved quite close to that hotspot. That level is not harmful for my house. You know, to make it harmful, I need to eat this soil or to stay naked for a month, and maybe I will have some consequences. So still that level and the time that we spend near that source of radiation is not too much. In general, in the exclusion zone, there are places where you are not allowed, not advised to go because of the safety rules, radiation safety rules. But you need to put an effort into this, you know, to get to these dangerous places. So here we have hotspots. All this area is more or less contaminated. The village was old and wooden. And that was kind of an experiment conducted by liquidators. What they did, they ruined all these wooden buildings and buried them in the soil. Why? Because the village is situated just 4 kilometers away from the nuclear power plant, and it was heavily contaminated. And you can see here is the main road. So liquidators had to take this road all the time. Something was needed to be done with the village. and they ruined the village, ruined the wooden buildings, put it into the ground. That was an experiment. Later they will find out that experiment was not really successful, because now radiation did not completely disappear. It was just hidden in the soil, and now with the time it settles deeper and deeper and deeper. The ground, like the screen, it protects us from radiation. But what about the underground waters? What about the soil? Here you see, so that area, it's simply now impossible to clean it from radiation. It will be contaminated like forever. For how long exactly? Well, different elements, they have different half-life period. So like iodine, it's 8 days of half-life period only, which means in 8 days half of iodine disappears and so on. So in 80 days no iodine is left. But if we are talking about plutonium, it will totally disappear in 240,000 years. Yeah, that's a lot. So all wooden buildings were destroyed, they were buried in the soil. The only building, one of the few buildings that survived here, is that one. That is the kindergarten for children. And the reason why the building survived is that it is made of bricks. So they could decontaminate it. Decontamination, that sounds complicated, but what does it mean? In fact, what could be washed, liquidators had been washing it with the water and the pressure mixed with the washing powder, chemicals. So what could not be washed, like personal belongings of people, animals, that was put into the soil, into the ground. So what happened to that building? They simply washed the building with the water to wash away the radioactive dust from the building into the ground. So another hotspot is situated nearby. Let me show it to you. So here it's very important not to step on the soil, because potentially you can contaminate your shoes. And what I mean by contamination, so there are physically these unstable atoms that stay in the soil, emit radiation. Yeah, and if I step on it, there is a risk that I can pick it up on my shoes and my shoes got contaminated. Well, that doesn't mean that I will have to throw it away, but I have to wash it. So there is a possibility, so it's not advised to step on the contaminated soil, even slightly contaminated. And here let's try to find the hotspot. So what I do, I move my Geiger counter closer to the soil, to the ground. So the same thing, it's not migrating in the same place. And here, now on my Geiger counter is 23 microsieverts per hour. That is even higher. That is even more. And the reason for that hotspot, you can try to guess. The reason is the building. So if you take a look to the top on the roof, you will understand what I mean. So the reason is the water that is falling down from the roof, and these radioactive elements are concentrated in the corner. So the water took the contaminated dust and it was washed down. First liquidators, later the rain. That's why this building is surrounded by the hotspots. And what I do with the Geiger counter at this point, I increase the sanitary level from 0.3 to 2.3 microsieverts per hour. It's not to forget completely about radiation, but not to hear that irritating sound all the time, because here inside of the 10 kilometers zone, there are almost no places with natural level of radiation. Everywhere it is higher. So 2.36. Now, if we step a little bit further from that hotspot, it will become less. Now it's 1.7, 1.1. So that is like normal level of radiation for the whole area. For Pripyat, for the area around the nuclear power plant. That is a kindergarten. Me personally, I don't like this place. Why? Because it reminds us about children who were innocent victims of this accident. And if you think a little bit, just imagine 4 kilometers away there is a nuclear power plant, and the night after that night when the accident happened, there was contamination in the air. Children were playing on the playground near the kindergarten, and they were not informed about the accident because the Soviets were always trying to hide the information. What should have been done, these children should hide inside of the building. Close your windows, close the doors, not to let this radioactive dust let inside of the building. But that wasn't done here. That is the Chernobyl nuclear power plant. From here you can see all 4 reactors. They are not in use anymore. So if you start from the right to the left, 2 black boxes, these are reactors number 1 and 2. Then you can see the rust roof, that is reactor number 3. And the reactor number 4, the one that exploded, is covered now with the new safe confinement. And now we're gonna visit that place.